The impasse comes at a critical moment for Boeing, facing a number of financial and PR hurdles.
After a series of scandals, Boeing is losing customers one by one, from the Middle East to Europe. Airlines that once placed full trust are now turning their backs, refusing to cooperate. Orders are being canceled, contracts frozen, Airbus quietly taking over. The exodus has begun, and Boeing is gradually being left behind. Today, let's look at 7 airlines that are saying goodbye to Boeing after a series of recent disasters. 1. Lion Air, the first severance after the disaster that killed 189 people. Recently, the world has been shocked and saddened by a tragic plane crash in India. But in Boeing's history, this is not the first time. In 2018, Lion Air Flight JT610 crashed into the Java Sea just 13 minutes after taking off from Jakarta. All 189 people on board died, making it one of the worst aviation disasters in Indonesia's history. But what made this crash particularly serious was the aircraft involved was the Boeing 737 MAX 8, a brand new model just put into operation, which was supposed to be a symbol of safety and fuel efficiency for the new generation. By March 2019, just a few months after the JT610 crash, Lion Air suddenly announced the cancellation of nearly 200 orders for Boeing 737 MAX, one of the most drastic moves ever in modern aviation history. Lion Air is not a small name. As the largest low-cost airline in Indonesia, with a network spanning Southeast Asia, it was once the largest 737 MAX customer in the Asia-Pacific region. In 2017, the airline signed a contract worth about $22 billion with Boeing, including MAX 8 and MAX 9 variants, expected to be the cornerstone for its regional expansion strategy. But everything collapsed after just one flight. Despite Boeing's efforts to appease, Lion Air did not accept the explanation. In a letter sent directly to the American corporation's leadership, the airline declared a serious loss of trust and officially requested to cancel the entire 200-plane order, while shifting to Airbus to ensure passenger safety and maintain the company's reputation. Lion Air's move not only shocked the region, but also kicked off a series of other nations and airlines suspending the MAX line, including Ethiopia Airlines, Air China, Singapore Airlines, and even the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration (FAA), known for defending Boeing. According to Reuters data, within just 6 months after the crash, Boeing lost more than $55 billion in market value, and the 737 MAX was grounded globally for over 20 months. It all started from Lion Air's unilateral but decisive withdrawal. But Lion Air is not the only name quietly leaving after the crash. 2. Ryanair puts Boeing on notice. Over 300 MAX planes are hanging in limbo for a reason beyond control. We cannot let political risk affect our operational plans. If that happens, we won't hesitate to switch to Airbus or Comac. CEO Michael O'Leary stated bluntly at an aviation conference in Dublin in May 2025. The tension does not stem from technical faults or aviation accidents, but from the increasingly complex US-EU trade conflict. Negotiations over aircraft import tax policy could raise the price of each Boeing by $7 to $12 million, with over 300 orders for 737 MAX still awaiting delivery. Mainly MAX 10 and MAX 8200 models, financial risks are becoming hard to ignore. O'Leary is not one to talk idly. Previously, Ryanair had received over 150 737 MAX 8-200 planes, a version specifically designed for the airline with high seat density and superior fuel efficiency. This once symbolized a deep partnership between the two sides, but within just a few months, Ryanair's tone completely changed, from strategic partner to tough negotiator. As a result, within Ryanair, various replacement scenarios have been considered. The Airbus A321neo, with advantages in payload, range, and being unaffected by US tariffs, is emerging as a strong candidate, even if planes won't be available until 2028. A bolder alternative is China's Comac C91 team. Though still unfamiliar to the European market, with recent statements, Ryanair shows nothing is impossible. Boeing, of course, is not sitting idly by. In a meeting with investors in early June 2025, CEO Dave Calhoun affirmed that the company is working closely with Ryanair to ensure timely delivery. However, geopolitical pressure, something beyond technical and production control, is making every reassurance less effective. But that's not all. The next name is even more shocking. 3. Garuda Indonesia, when a nation chooses to stand with passengers.
Felt like I was abandoning the Titanic.
To many Indonesians, the national airline's decision to part ways with Boeing is the right one. It is not just an economic decision, but an act of reassurance after the JT610 disaster that stunned the entire country. Garuda Indonesia represents the image, reputation, and safety policy of the country's entire aviation industry. The announcement to terminate the contract with Boeing, amid an ongoing investigation into the MCAS software design flaw, is akin to an official state-level voice, even without any accompanying diplomatic statement. Garuda gave a simple yet weighty reason: our passengers no longer feel confident flying with that aircraft model. No mention of technical matters, no mention of politics, but everyone understands trust is broken, and when the airline no longer dares to stake safety on Boeing's technology, the only choice is to stop. Many passengers showed complete agreement. Rina Wulandari, a mother of 2 living in Surabaya, shared,
I once considered canceling my trip home because I knew I would be flying on a MAX. The feeling of being trapped, even though I did nothing wrong.
Garuda's decision had a powerful ripple effect across ASEAN, not only because of the scale of the order, 49 the 737 MAX planes worth nearly $6 billion USD, but also due to its symbolism. Garuda was once a loyal Boeing customer, with most of its fleet being 737s and 777s. Canceling the MAX order was not just a step back in business, but also the first public declaration of severed ties from a national airline in the region. Notably, right after the cancellation, Garuda began restructuring its fleet, gradually adding Airbus A330 and A320 models for domestic and regional routes. This was not merely a move to replace the MAX, but a sign that the airline is ready to pivot its strategy, no longer putting all its trust in a single American manufacturer as before. And that was the past. What about the present? Clearly, things are getting worse for Boeing. 4. Qatar Airways cutting ties with Boeing MAX. Most recently, in May 2025, Qatar Airways officially announced the cancellation of its order for 25 Boeing 737 MAX 10 aircraft. Though the number is not too large compared to the huge contracts the airline had previously signed, this move attracted special attention during such a sensitive time for Boeing. According to observers, the decision stemmed from Boeing's continuous delays in delivering the MAX 10 variant, a variant that had not yet been granted commercial flight certification at the time of the announcement. The Middle Eastern airline had originally planned to put these aircraft into operation from early 2024 to serve short-haul routes in the Gulf region and the Indian subcontinent. However, more than a year has passed. Boeing has still not been able to deliver a single airframe out of the 25 contracted. More notably, this is not just about delivery time. The MAX 10 is currently still awaiting flight certification from the U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, while Boeing continues to face a series of quality incidents and global scandals. The lack of technical and legal certainty has led many airlines to start asking, is the MAX 10 a reliable strategic choice? For Qatar Airways, which is famous for its strict operating standards and flexible fleet strategy, patience has its limits. The order cancellation is not just an immediate response, but could also mark a deeper adjustment in its investment perspective on Boeing. From a major customer who once owned dozens of Boeing 777s, 787s, and committed to purchasing more 737 MAX, Qatar Airways is now gradually shifting its focus. The evidence is that just a few weeks after the cancellation announcement, Qatar Airways continued to expand its contract with Airbus, Boeing's biggest competitor. Currently, the airline operates more than 40 A320neo aircraft and has signed orders for an additional 50 A321neo aircraft, many of which have already been delivered and put into operation from Q4 2024. According to data from PlaneSpotters.net, as of June 2025, Qatar Airways currently owns 42 operational A320neo and A321neo aircraft, while the number of Boeing MAX aircraft in its fleet is 0, and the next name will surely surprise you. 5. Boeing frozen in China, a silent block from the world's second largest market. While the West has only threatened to cancel orders or impose tariffs, in China, the door to Boeing has almost closed, quietly but definitively. In April 2025, a series of major airlines such as China Southern, Air China, and China Eastern simultaneously ceased receiving new Boeing aircraft. At the same time, all contract signing activities with the American manufacturer were frozen indefinitely under implicit government directives. There was no official statement, no press conference, and no tweet, but observers clearly understand what is happening. A silent, strategic embargo applied by China against Boeing, amidst escalating trade and technology tensions with the US. According to Bloomberg, from early 2024 to April 2025, Boeing delivered only 6 aircraft to Chinese airlines, compared to over 70 aircraft during the same period last year. New contracts that were under negotiation, including dozens of 737 MAX and 787 Dreamliner aircraft, have all been postponed indefinitely, with no scheduled resumption of signing. The deep-seated reason is not aircraft quality, but rather an issue of technological trust and security. The Chinese government is increasingly concerned about the potential integration of sensitive US technology into the civil aviation sector. Simultaneously, Beijing is actively promoting its aviation self-sufficiency strategy, centering on the COMAC C919, a domestic narrow-body aircraft expected to replace the MAX on domestic and regional routes. According to analysis from Flight Global, in 2025 alone, Boeing could lose up to $4.5 billion in revenue from potential contracts in China. There is no official ban, but all doors are gradually closing. Meanwhile, Airbus, its European competitor, has signed many new large contracts, including an agreement to supply over 100 A320neo aircraft to Chinese airlines in Q1 to 2025 alone. This makes Boeing's position in the key Asian market increasingly precarious. But that's not the worst of it for Boeing. If the actions were public and clear, at least Boeing could find countermeasures. But not everyone chooses such a public approach. 6. Virgin Australia silent but shocking, never stating it would leave. But from 2020 to 2023, what Virgin Australia did was enough for people to understand that the airline was quietly stepping out of its long-standing relationship with Boeing. Initially, Virgin was one of the customers that placed high expectations on the Boeing 737 MAX family, with a fleet plan of over 50 aircraft. However, after the Lion Air accident and then Ethiopian Airlines, coupled with prolonged technical inspections and a global grounding order, everything began to change. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic, reduced travel demand, an unstable short-term market, forcing the airline to reevaluate its fleet strategy. Result, Virgin canceled almost all of its MAX orders, only retaining 25 737 MAX 10 aircraft, but continued to delay receiving the aircraft until at least 2023. A slow approach, not making headlines, but clear. The trust was no longer the same. Among observers, this is seen as a shift towards a new trend in the Oceania region. As the aviation market recovers post-pandemic, many airlines in the region, from Australia, New Zealand to smaller island nations, are beginning to gradually shift to Airbus aircraft, especially the A320neo and A321XLR, which are highly regarded for their fuel efficiency and flexibility. Virgin Australia is no exception. Although it has not declared a complete break with Boeing, the choice of prolonged delay, combined with the addition of many Airbus models in its expansion plan, shows that the airline is gradually pivoting its fleet towards Europe. The withdrawal of a large and once loyal customer like Virgin did not create an immediate shock, but in the long run, this is the kind of departure that Boeing may not realize until all doors have closed. And when the Oceania market gradually shifts, this silent decision could be the most subtle yet strongest warning. 7. Fly a deal, when trust is no longer negotiable. And the last name on today's list is Fly a Deal. In March 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 crashed just 6 minutes after takeoff, taking the lives of 157 people. That was the second accident involving a Boeing 737 MAX in less than 5 months. And this time, its impact was no longer confined to Southeast Asia. Just 4 months later, in July 2019, Flyadeal, a low-cost airline owned by Saudi Arabian Airlines, announced it would cancel all 30 of its Boeing 737 MAX orders. No circumlocution, no delays, and no need for a third accident. Their alternative choice was the Airbus A320neo, a short-haul aircraft increasingly dominating market share in the Middle East and Europe. This was not just a change in aircraft portfolio, but an adjustment in the airline's entire development strategy. Flyadeal at that time was in the phase of domestic expansion and establishing its position in Saudi Arabia's low-cost aviation segment. "We need planes that passengers feel safe on," does a Flyadeal executive shared briefly in a press release. Although not directly mentioning the incident, the reason for the loss of trust after the Ethiopia Airlines disaster is undeniable. With Boeing, this was a strategic loss. The Middle East was a region where the company once held a dominant role in the narrow body segment, especially with subsidiary airlines of large groups like Emirates, Qatar Airways, or Saudi Arabian Airlines. Flyadeal's switch to Airbus means losing a foothold in a rapidly growing market, where domestic and regional travel demand increases steadily each year. Since then, Flyadeal has continued to expand its A320neo fleet, gradually redefining its identity as a new, young airline no longer dependent on Boeing's shadow. From decisive announcements to silent withdrawals, a series of global airlines are sending a clear signal. Boeing is no longer the default choice. A string of deadly accidents, technical crises, and prolonged delays have eroded the most important asset in the aviation industry: trust. As Airbus continuously records record orders and Comac begins to enter the game, Boeing faces the risk of not only losing customers, but also losing a position once considered untouchable. And in a world where every aircraft is linked to lives, trust, once lost, may never return. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting content. Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and don't forget, what we share in this video is for reference and analysis from various perspectives only. Please combine it with other sources of information to get a full and objective view.